vegetable when you don't say a word. You see, talking's the key, listening's overrated. There ain't nothing to hear but politics and rage. Start reading those books, boy, get yourself learned. Use your time wise, though you're planning to burn. You see, you read while you're young and write when you're old. Take the knowledge you're forced, play when you're told.
The 77.7 Project is, by its simplest definition, a look into religion and its effects on subculture. As you watch, we ask you to challenge your heart and tear down the walls.
Make my tears, it was so affected. That's how I fall apart. Can't say a word. The presentation too. Justice is gone by a run. Let's make a fight. Make a right or tonight. So hope you do your best to release punishment. You gotta throw us out. What was it you did? With my soul I drew. You fight for me.
Sleeping Giant is a Christian hardcore band among the straight edge scene, a culture promoting no drinking, drugs, or promiscuous sex.
People run to like a subculture. They do so for a family, and the same thing happens with straight edge because it's so closely knit with the hardcore scene, and straight edge as a community, people run to it for that.
Christianity can learn a lot by every subculture. That's what I think. Because subcultures make up for where the church has failed. Most churches, not the church in general, but each individual church, the culture inside that really is a byproduct of the pastor, of the leader, or the leadership. And so they're expecting the people to look like the pastor or pastors. And so when you don't fit into that guideline, or when you fall out slightly, what happens is basically the love is removed.
So straight edge as a community, people run to it for that, for that, and when sometimes they can't find it in a Christian church or Christian family.
One of the most die-hard groups among subculture is a group started by hip-hop duo The Insane Clown Posse, a group of misfit fans who created a community from the horrorcore genre of music, individuals dubbed as juggalos.
I heard Great Malenko for the first time in 1997, and that's basically when I fell in love with being a juggalo.
Cryptic castles craft and come back soon to be.
The whole scene just floored me, and I liked the music from day one, and here I am now, still a juggalo, like 14 years later, I guess.
It's anybody and everybody. Yeah. Just because you have long hair and it just doesn't matter if you have a deformity, it doesn't matter black, white, blue, green, you can join. Because most people, they just hear the cuss words, they hear the F word, they hear this, they hear that. They don't actually hear the message, what they're trying to say.
Truly, I've never really believed in God myself, and I still kind of don't, but in a way, ICP's towards me, they opened my eyes to God.
It's something to believe in.
Some guys, after they're done with work or whatever, they go to the bar and have a beer. I don't. My job is I kick somebody's head in. Half the time I get my head kicked in, and that's just how it is, and that's how I like it. I've been down with the clowns since 95. Whether you like them or hate them or their music sucks or this or that, that's for you to decide. I'm definitely a juggalo. I've been a juggalo for, 16, 17 years now or something.
Spun off the heels of the punk rock movement, a culture of fashion, music, darkness, and beauty. This is the world of goth.
With me, I've always been into the goth, scene. Not exactly just the goth scene, but just, the style in general. The whole, attitude that not maybe every goth has, but a lot of goths have. How life should be beautiful, but this kind of morbid, dark, beautiful. I just remember when I was interested in these women. I was just kind of enamored by them. I couldn't understand how they could pull this style off, and it would be okay. But if I wanted to do that, it wouldn't be okay.
When I was about 5, I remember that I was watching a vampire movie on TV, and I decided I needed to be those people or that guy, and I remember breaking into my mom's makeup and painting my face all up, and I must have been less than elementary school age, for sure.
I think goths have a very strong vein of artisticness and theatricality to them, and interest in the supernatural, like you were saying with the vampires. They like the spooky things, and that kind of thing starts when you're young, probably. It's kind of like appreciating all of the things that generally in dominant culture is repressed, like death or depression or any of these things, and kind of not being afraid to look at it head on and see how it's a part of life.
Dark and often storied content has garnered much controversy. We've heard stories of devil worship, church burnings, but what is it really?
I'm the lead singer and guitarist in the band Augury. We are from Montreal, Canada. Extreme music is like channels frustration the same way, a bit like sport replaced war. In between you have gladiator and stuff. So it's some kind of negative energy that's turned into positive. A few people are truly dark and negative, but there are an absolute minority. My personal lyrics are, it's a dramatic synthesis about conspiracy theories. I've been reading about the mysteries like Bermuda Triangle, what else, UFOs, shadow government since I'm like 12.
Warbringer from Ventura, California, and started the band along with John Locke's about like 5 years ago, and now we've been touring the States and Europe for about 2 years, playing a show pretty much every day. It makes you go, when you listen to it, and that's the point. Generally, it's not religious, you can say that, but to go any further, you'd start making blanket statements that don't apply in a lot of cases. I mean, we've got a song which references Satan and whatnot to us or any of the bands we know of, or many of the bands we know of that have like evil imagery and stuff, actually believe that this stuff exists. No, I don't believe there's a God or a Satan, but I do think, Master of Darkness and Evil, hell yes, let's put that in a metal song. That would be awesome.
What is dead is indeed dead.
For real? So I don't think it can apply to someone isn't or isn't religious. It's not something that keeps me from liking someone or disliking someone at the same time. It's like, it's a personal preference and no one's right. No one can prove either one's right or wrong in my opinion. There's so many other things besides what someone believes is in the afterlife that would make me like or not like them. I mean, it's not like, this guy's really cool and I find out he's like a Christian. I'm like, who gives a fuck, really?
When we were asking Dave to join the band, the last thing we thought of was like, what are his religious beliefs? We're just like, hey, this dude can play guitar and he can sing, let's get him. It has nothing to do with that for us, really.
One of the most prevalent things in the underground is piercings and tattoos. The misconceptions of these have caused much controversy as to why people in counterculture embrace them.
Piercings and tattoos kind of the stepping stone for,
That's
you know,
universal.
becoming into it like a subculture.
I would absolutely love at this moment to take off my shirt and show you my many tattoos. We need each other so badly. The body of Christ has got to look almost existently contradictory. It's got to look weird. It's got to look like, what in the world does this 75-year-old white-haired, button-down, attended church since he was 12 woman have to do with this tatted up sleeves, piercing everywhere, punk rocker sitting next to her?
I think it's funny that piercing is not acceptable unless you're a woman. Like the church actually.
Where's that in the Bible?
The church actually isn't against piercing because it's okay for women to have their ears pierced. So they say it's unnatural, but for some reason it's not unnatural to put them through your lobes if you're.
Doesn't make any sense.
It's unnatural. Was it unnatural for your wife? Well,
It's different. She's a woman.
It's
What?
Different. Well, you destroyed your temple. Would you say that to your wife?
When I first became a Christian, joining a church, I did what other Christians told me to do. I would dress up nice and, cut my hair. And
when I met him, he would wear like khaki Dockers and like button-up shirts, short hair.
And then we flew out to a leadership conference at a church called Willow Creek. And that's where I first saw Christians with tattoos and piercings, and I was like, what? And instantly started stereotyping people. We got to know those people, and it was like, oh wow, a revelation of God using you for who you are and not for what other Christians want you to be.
When we talk about religions and the idea of maybe individual expression or something, the thing that comes to mind for me as a religious historian is the concept of taboo in religion. And the reason for a taboo is basically a prohibition of anything because either A, it's considered sacred, or B, it's considered dangerous. So there's actually a scripture in Leviticus 19:28, chapter 19, verse 28, that says marking the body is unacceptable. It's prohibited by God. And a lot of people then, rabbis and clerics in the Islamic community, and then of course Christianity that uses the Old Testament too, they've used this scripture to indicate that marking the body with anything permanent like tattooing or some piercings, ear piercings and nose piercings are different than the gauging and stuff like that permanently scar the body. There are also in all three of these traditions kind of subcultures that believe that tattooing is actually a sacred art and can be used as such. It can be a great evangelical, in a sense, tool. Crosses or Kabbalah symbols or something tattooed on your body could be a way to express yourself religiously and spiritually.
Religion has played a key part in individuals among American subculture, some with it, some pushing hard against it.
Touring with any type of band affects the crowd. It doesn't matter what the band, whether the band's Christian or atheist or satanic or whatever. It's like every single band affects the crowd because every single band really has their own mindset or agenda, and a lot of times the fans relate to that mindset or agenda. So you can even have 5 Christian bands on the show and have 5 different agendas going on.
Notice it. It is one of the strangest tales ever told. It deals with the 2 great mysteries of creation, life and death. I think it will thrill you. It may shock you. It might even horrify you. So if any of you feel that you do not care to subject your nerves to such a strain, now is your chance to, well, we've warned you.
My name is T.D. Benton, and I am the dreamer and the creator of the Traveling Like Collar Sideshow. This is my lovely, wonderful, beautiful wife, Veronica, who plays the faceless woman in our performance. As a Christian, we want to forget about the things that we've struggled with and wear that mask of, yes, everything's perfect, everything's fine. So when we play in clubs, the difference is where we do more of a challenge in the Christian world. When we go to the clubs, it's more of a loving, because people identify with what I have to say and what our performance means to them, and they see this as, holy cow, that's me on the stage.
Jesus told us the great commandment is to love God and to love people. That's all we want to do.
Yeah.
And they know we're Christians by our love.
And I think it's gotten to the point where we have sugar-coated a lot of things in the Christian world, where people, when we perform in clubs, they want something real. And Christians want something real too, but when we come to church, there's a lot of sugar-coating going on. And yes, we shouldn't talk about this, and yes, we shouldn't do that, or, you know, I'll touch the subject, but I'm not going to dive in deep.
My name's Ken Kruger. I am officially the Senior Associate Pastor at Mountain View Christian Assembly in Sandy, Utah. I hold 2 different Bible degrees from schools in Florida. Here's what I think is happening, and here's why I can say it's happening with a smile on my face, even though I am a minister and have devoted and I will bleed my life's blood for Christ's church, capital C. The church in America is in dire straits, and there's such just cause why the population is looking at us going, these guys are idiots. They don't have it. They don't know what's up. They don't know, the real world, and they're hypocritical, and they're judgmental, and they're very unpleasant to be around. You know, they're right. They're absolutely right.
Modern day Christianity today, as we know it, especially youth groups, are not about introducing people to the person of God. We're about introducing people to the moral structure of Christianity, and it's really become about sin management.
Sometimes you break, sometimes you fall, sometimes you lose it all.
I'm Assistant Professor of Humanities. I teach World Religions, Religious Diversity in America. According to the Pew Forum for American Religions, I believe is what it's called. It's a very reputable site, the Pew Forum. But their whole deal is to examine religion in America and how it interacts with culture and politics and so forth. And according to them, too, about 90% of Americans are religious, and the majority of those, 51% being Protestant Christian and another 26% being Catholic. So again, the majority, about 76% or so, being Christian. But 28% of those that are Christian will leave their religion. It asks all different kinds of reasons why, but the largest religion that is hit by this is actually Catholicism. And the major reason being that their services and their teachings don't seem to be very relevant to the lifestyle of the youth in American culture today. It's too ritualized, it's too symbolic, it's too solemn. It doesn't seem joyful, it doesn't connect to what the issues that they're really dealing with. There's a very hard stance against issues that are facing them all the time: drugs, abortion, homosexuality, all these different things that our youth are constantly faced with. And so they're being hit really hard with what we call attrition, the loss of membership. Second to that would be our Protestant groups, our traditional Protestant groups, Lutheran, Baptist, Methodist, and so forth. And the majority of the people that leave these religions don't always just go off and do nothing, but they very often will look for something else that fulfills their needs better, that are more capable of answering questions that youth are faced with specifically.
I became interested in Satanism at a young age, around the age of 12 or 13. I was raised in a typical American household. Nothing traumatic happened, I wasn't abused. It was a happy family, Catholic family. I went to church maybe once a month, went to Christmas Mass once a year. And even at a young age, I always had a hard time swallowing the concepts of God and the stories in the Bible. I always looked at the Bible as being kind of a fairy tale, just like Santa Claus the Easter Bunny.
Taco Cores was a novel that I wrote about a bunch of Muslim punk rock kids that I originally put out by myself, just on photocopiers. And the documentary follows the real life Taco Cores around the United States and in Pakistan. I was coming from a real wounding experience with organized religion and I was just fantasizing about a different possibility, you know, more open-ended interpretation of Islam, or the possibility for more open-ended interpretations. I didn't have a forum as a Muslim to be honest with other Muslims about what I felt, what I believed or did not believe. And putting the book out brought all these different people to me, and we kind of created that forum together. I believe in Allah. I'm probably like an Ibn Arabi agnostic. Everything that I work with is Islam, and to me that makes me a Muslim. I think all I've ever wanted with religion is just the chance to be creative with it. You know, just that it's not something that just gets fed to you and just gets stamped onto your brain. You know, I wanted the opportunity to have a hand in its construction, you know, in the way that I relate to it.
Just going to church and stuff like that seems a little bit more like I was shunned for the way that I thought. I just don't like how they looked at me and didn't think I knew what I was talking about. Like, just because I have my own style, they thought that I wasn't a part of the hive mind. Even though I was suicidal as a kid, I didn't seek help because I knew it was wrong and that I knew people would look down on me for it. Whenever someone told me that they would pray for me, that was like one of the biggest insults to me, because it was like, what's wrong with me? Why do you need to pray for me?
Religions are started for a good reason, and they are hijacked and used as a control tool. What happened is that, you see, you have the three Abrahamic religions, it's the same God, and they fight each other. Within Christianity, in Ireland, you have Catholic fighting Protestant. They believe in the same God. They fight over a tiny difference in cult.
More than any other religion, Christianity has become the most denominated. There are approximately 34,000 different Christian groups in the world, or Christian denominations. It's just amazing. The other characteristic of religions like Christianity and, well, Western religions in general, Christianity, Islam, and Judaism, again, are what we would call an exclusivist attitude. And this is tied into the concept of salvation.
Any spiritual framework of thinking, any spiritual upbringing, there are going to be flaws in how it's presented or lived out, because we're flawed human beings. Let's say you were raised in a family that, in a very bad sense, was religious, but I mean that in a pharisaical mindset, rules and regs, no relationship, no love, just you do this because if you don't, I'm going to beat you. You know, they could be espousing the truth in a very erroneous way that almost negates the truth. When they're wounded by the hypocrisy of their religion, but they still have that spirit crying out in them. I don't care if you're suicidal. I mean, honestly, suicide by its very definition, even at the end of it all, is a selfish act for peace. I don't care if it's atheism. It's still, you're nostalgic for the past. You're hopeful for the future. Homosexuality. And homosexuality is such a hot button right now, and it is such an alienating thing between the church and that culture, because it's so, oh man, we have been so horrible at mistreating this group. You know, but the church needs to get off its high horse and say, we're all flawed, we're all broken, we all love Christ.
You're a Christian, you've felt the love of God in your heart, so you also feel love, whether you're married, you have kids, you know, you have a dog, you know what the feeling of love is. Also, there are feelings, you know, that you might not understand, but that you could still help by just not understanding and being there for the person. The church does amazing things. It has great morals. I mean, Jesus Christ is my Savior. I never really told anyone. It wasn't really a struggle at first because I didn't really think about it. Because I just never really thought I was gay. I was like, well, I'm not gay. You know you are, but you think you're not. my parents did Bible studies, they became deacons. I wanted to kind of be a youth pastor. That's kind of what my idea was at the time. I kind of still felt not right because no one really knew how I felt. I got real depressed. I was in the car and I was pretty ready to end it because I felt like I was a mistake. You get low, And whether someone says, "Oh, well, you're still going to hell," or "You're still can be saved," or "You're just not right. You're just living in sin." I can't change. I'm sorry. So I'm just gonna live the best I can be.
In fact, if one was truly Christian, they would actually go by the example of Jesus Christ, who, according to the New Testament, associated themselves with the marginalized people in society, those that were not accepted, those that were in need of compassion and in need of help, and most likely, at that time, that would have included any homosexuals in the community. But for whatever reasons, that hasn't been the case. Christianity overall is, while they may be tolerant of the person, love the sinner, but hate the sin kind of attitude, I think that attitude is actually more harmful than it is helpful. And that loving the sinner is of course appropriate, but and hating the sin is also appropriate, but using that to label certain behavior and to, in a sense, justify condemnation of individuals because of that practice is obviously un-Jesus-like.
You ever been in love with someone who didn't return that love? See, it's not about what's in her head, it's about what's in mine. It's like that's all I have left.
In order for subculture to understand religion, religion must first understand why people choose counterculture to begin with. Oftentimes it's not because they lost faith in their religion, but it's because their religion lost faith in them.
I mean, eventually every person is going to come to a point where they seek out their own spiritual experience. So I don't think it's wrong or bad to raise your kids to believe a certain way, as long as you also encourage a questioning aspect.
In Utah in general, probably the counterculture is very strong because the conservative culture is so strong.
Being a pastor, is one thing for me, but I also run a business. I don't get paid from the church I pastor, I get paid from my business, but I understand when I run my business, business is business. And when you put my family in jeopardy because of lack of money, that means I'm going to change the way I think or do things. If my people don't come and pay and we don't keep them happy, ultimately the church is going to struggle. I'm going to struggle, my family's going to struggle. I don't think pastors would actually say this out loud, but really it's a root. It's deep inside there. To be successful as a church, you have to have people coming in and people giving. That is our view of success. When it's not based on changing the world around us. It's just based on keeping people happy.
Part of the reason that what we would call New Age traditions too, like pagan worship or Wicca, something like this, along with Buddhism, Hinduism, and other Eastern form religions are more popular with our youth these days, is because a lot of them believe in the idea of reincarnation too. This idea that we have a lot of opportunities to understand who we are, what we are, and to find our way to understanding or enlightenment. And rather than the Western traditions, the monotheistic traditions that claim one opportunity, one chance to get it right, and so they're much more hardline about following laws, following commandments, doing things one way, their way, or no way.
I think that goths are very across the board, any kind of religion or none, and it's pretty common to find goths that are kind of into alternative things like like Wicca and that sort of thing. Like anything that is not necessarily mainstream, they've probably looked into and explored. But, you know, there are Christian goths, there are Satanist goths, there are agnostic goths. Anything, it has absolutely nothing to do with your gothness and your spirituality. They're completely separate.
If you really want to get someone's attention, then you've got to relate with them. And most people can't relate to some clean-cut kid in a suit.
I think that's very telling, actually, of you know, what these religions may have to do in order to hold on to their youth population. And a lot of religions are doing that. They're making their doctrines more relevant. They're including more technological aspects to their services. They're online, they're podcasting. They've got rock bands, they've got you know, big screens so that they can broadcast. People can see they're using technology, light shows. They have Bible studies with donuts and coffee and pool tables in their buildings and so forth, all to sort of attract you know, the youth back into their faith. Overall, a much better understanding that the youth have different needs today. The really revolutionary thing with religion is actually the concept of reform. But if a religion doesn't maintain that, then it is going to lose people, and it's going to lose people that are most affected in society, and that would be our youth.
But I believe in my heart that the spirit of religion has robbed you guys of who God really can be. And I think the church sometimes, I mean all church, okay? I'm not talking just the LDS church or the Christian church or the Catholic church, whatever. Church can stand in the way of a real relationship with God. And that's what we're here to represent.
I'm sure a lot of people may see, you know, the title under my face here and just automatically shut me off, and I understand that. There have been a lot of people who have had titles like mine that have really mistreated them.
See me run from the ashes
Blown up abortion clinics.
of the bridges that
And they
I
called you a fag.
I'll stay focused on the
And called you a sinner because you got tattoos.
only taking what I
It's just not God.
Feels like everything comes crashing down around me, but I won't fall, I'll keep my head held high.
Christ looks at you and
I
says, I
must
love you
continue on the path before me
so much, just the way you are.
and never let the past suck me dry. The broken road behind me and the dreams that I've let die, a relentless reminder of the times that I have tried and failed.
That if you're gonna love God, you need to love people in the exact same fashion you love God.
You gouge the right eye of your infants and seat them high on a cloud to gaze at one hand of your Savior. Is their ignorance what you're so proud of? You condemn the rind of an apple as obstructing your conscience so wise. You curse every rib of that first wicked soul, but pity yourself for your providential plight. I want fruit in my garden, a top beyond my wife. I want hell below heaven, I want death with my life. Isn't the option beautiful? Da, 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 da.
children sheltered virtue, but they haven't yet raced through the dust and the heat. Don't mistake innocence for purity. I say put them on trial, cast them out in the street. Let's watch the superior reason compete with new appetite. I'll gamble my chips that they'll side with the devil. Oh, what a fascinating sight. I want fruit in my garden, I'll tap me on my wife. I want hell below heaven, I want death with my life. Isn't the option beautiful?